Aloha, everyone. Thank you for coming. There may be more people jumping in as time goes by here, but thank you for showing up on a Sunday afternoon for this talk, Daring to Find Meaning in Chaos, a non-ordinary look at America and Trump. And can everyone hear me okay? Maybe just put a thumbs up or yes in the chat. Thank you. This image right here is an image that I created the Friday before the assassination attempt. So this was on the 12th of this month. And after the events of Saturday unfolded, it was kind of like I looked back at this image. I'm like, wow, this was kind of foretelling in a way. The suddenness of the lightning and the effect that we all feel, that we've all felt. And I know that Trump is a loaded topic. You know, either you hate him or you love him, or most people are on that polarity. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to sharing. I'm a little nervous about sharing. This is feels like a charged topic to be sharing on, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. And Spirit has definitely been kind of pressing me, pushing me into this place of sharing. So I'm just going to share a little disclaimer at the beginning here. This is for education and information purposes only. These views are my own or what I've received from spiritual guidance. I invite you to receive what I have to share and check it against your own intuitive guidance, your own body's wisdom, and your own research. And I think to get going, it feels like it could be really useful just to like ground and receive some healing. So I want you to know that I am broadcasting some flower essences to us during our time together today. That's part of what I do. I'm a flower essence practitioner, among other things. And so this felt like a great time to really draw on the energies of the flowers for support. So I've listed the flowers here. They're in right to left order in this right here: comfrey, coyote mint, bird's eye gilia, red clover, echinacea, fringed violet, angel sword. Now, these are all interesting remedies. They're focused on trauma as well as clarifying the aura, clarifying the mind, protecting the mind, and also kind of reconnecting parts that maybe have gotten traumatized and split off. So, so my intention with these essences is just that they be a support for us as we kind of walk through some interesting, maybe frightening, maybe traumatic kind of information. For some people, it might be triggering. So I invite you to, if you choose to open to receive these essences, you certainly don't have to open to that. You can just make a note in your mind to close to their influence or their support. But there's no agenda with these essences other than support, so, and healing. And so I'd like to start with just inviting us all to close our eyes. If you're not driving, just close your eyes and take some deep breaths in the nose, out the mouth. And just allow your energy to land fully right here in this moment. Feel your body touching the chair or the furniture that you're sitting on, laying on. And a little bit deeper, just allowing your energy to land in your body, feeling your sovereignty, feeling your integrity, feeling presence, your own awareness. And if it feels correct to you, opening to just allowing these flower essences to just minister to you, to touch you, to support you, whatever feels good to you. And I invite you to just simply trust your own wisdom and to receive from this time together what feels correct for you to receive, and to discard what feels correct to discard. And just thanking each of you for being here. And thank you for pausing to just allow that little deepening and grounding to take place. All right, we're going to continue on here. I will say that I probably will not be opening up to questions by mic. We'll see maybe later on if we have time. I might open the mics for people to comment or question. If you do have a question that arises as we go on, I recommend that you write it down, or you can put it in the chat, and I'll go back at a point where that feels correct for me, and I'll look at those questions or those comments. So feel free to do that. And I ask that you just keep yourself muted during the talk. So Maya Angelou said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Um, I saw this quote this week, and it just really struck me, and really feels connected to where I have been. Um, and whew, yeah, there's pain that's caused when we are carrying things that we feel like we can't share, right? There have been moments in the last few years that I have felt able to share pieces of my story, um, and that's been healing in and of itself. But this is really the first time that I'm kind of cohesively putting it together, at least attempting to cohesively put it together, because it's not a very cohesive storyline. The journey is not very cohesive. It's very abstract and sporadic, but hopefully I've done a decent job of stringing things together today, or I will have. Um, so who am I? Um, so I grew up in the South, born and raised in South Carolina, born into a Christian home, and still somewhat identify as that. But definitely my spiritual worldview has definitely gone through a lot of shifting and changing. I'm very grateful for that upbringing and that foundation. Um, I'm a mystic and lover of life. I'm a homeopath, practicing homeopath and flower essence practitioner, evolutionary astrologer. So you will see me bring in some astrology in our talk together today. Don't worry, you don't have to know astrology. I will unpack that for you. I'm also an intuitive healer and a hypnotherapist, a singer, psalmist, and a hospice nurse. So lots of little different uh, hats to wear, I guess. And this is my chart, my birth chart. And what I wanted to really point out in my chart is in evolutionary astrology, I look mainly like the key area that I look are the nodes and the rulers of the nodes. So this is the north node of the moon, the south node of the moon. And specifically the north node in my chart is on the bottom of the chart, in Scorpio, with Uranus right next to it. And this is the third house of perception, communication. The fourth house cusp here is like who we are at our core level, like at our deepest, when no one else is around, what are we? Um, and For me, like anytime I see somebody with a north node essentially in the third house, which is what this is, the path ahead in this life, the journey ahead in this life is very abstract. It's like following breadcrumbs, um, like Hansel and Gretel. Like you can't see the path really that far ahead. It's really just in the moment, having to trust and to follow, you know. And Scorpio is really the dark, is the deep unconscious territory. It's the dark. It's connected to hell realms and what's been buried, what you don't want to see. And so a lot of my journey in this life has been about really encountering the hellish realms and kind of stumbling into that, not necessarily having a knowing of that's where I was going. So I'm just kind of setting some stage here, setting some groundwork for what's to come here. I hope that made sense. You can also look at the rest of my chart. If you know astrology, you can see um, other things. But I wanted to point that piece out. My journey has required me to be kind of in the dark and go into the dark and to trust that I had to encounter some very difficult places, um, and work with, you could say, things that people don't want to see. Pluto, Uranus in the third house around perception. Uh, so going forward, when I think about America and Trump and the political scene, and I kind of wrote about this in my Facebook post and my newsletter. I often feel like people are talking up here, you know, the iceberg, you know, the part that we can see, you know, and so we get all fixated on our issues, on our the things that we're passionate about, and we all have different ones and multiple ones. And to me, this is like where we get kind of fixated and maybe distracted. Um, and then there's all of this territory underneath the water that is hidden that we can't see. Um, and so over the course really of my adult life, I mean, this is the stuff that I've had to really look at collectively. I've been kind of pushed into this place of seeing collectively, and this is the stuff that I've been looking at. So this stuff up here kind of um it's interesting, and I have my own viewpoints, my own things that I'm passionate about, um but really healing and transformation can only happen at this level, the level of the unconscious. The unconscious is the driver. It is the um we can, you know, we can think that we're driving, but it's the unconscious that's really driving things, whether it's for us personally in our own healing journey or whether it's collectively, nationally, world on the world stage. It is what is hidden, what is unconscious, that is the momentum pusher. It's what's driving where we're going. Um, and this part up here is only kind of like along for the ride, essentially. Um, so I that's context for, I feel like, where we're going here. Um, and I hope you'll allow me to take a little seeming detour, but it's important because, again, like, you know, with the iceberg, like, where are you looking from? Are you looking from up here? Are you standing on the iceberg, you know, and oblivious to what's beneath? Or are you like a deep sea diver and looking at things from down here? Um, and so perspective is really important. Um, and obviously, I'm only one perspective, and I'm feeling called to share that perspective. But I hope it will be informative and valuable for you to receive today. Um, So I bring in the whole idea of astrological ages, and I've done another video on this called The Shifting of the Ages. I will include that link in the follow-up email with the recording of this talk. But I wanted to take a moment and just do a brief kind of review, especially for people who are new and have not seen that video. The whole idea of astrological ages is really like, what is the backdrop, the thematic backdrop that everything else in the world is arising in, especially from a human perspective. And the astrological age, which ranges anywhere from 2000 to 2600 years, because the signs are not all equal. So it's not a 360-degree circle divided into equal parts of 12. Each sign's a little bit different, and it's hard. There's lots and lots of debate in the astrological world, like where we are. I'm pretty clear that we are in the age of Aquarius now. We've transitioned. And one of the reasons I say that is, the whole adage, as above, so below. So, there's a birth chart that reflects your soul at the time of your birth, as above, so below. That chart is a mirror, or we could say a wisdom tool for you. If as above, so below is true, then so is as below, so above. So if there's confusion in where things start and begin in the sky, then wouldn't it make sense that we could maybe look at what's happened in human civilization and draw from that where we are, as far as an astrological age? And I think, to me, it's pretty clear. One of those being Kitty Hawk and the Wright brothers, um, having sustained flight. This was back in what was 1903, or I forget the exact date, but sustained flight, man actually leaving the Earth, is a really strong Aquarian image archetype happening. Aquarius is an air sign, so it's about the air, and it's fixed air. So being able to sustain flight is a very fixed air, synchronicity arising. So, to me, this is coinciding or reflecting to us that we had entered into the sign of Aquarius. Now, the cuspal periods of these ages are very long, hundreds of years. So I'm just pointing out a couple of things that have happened that I feel are connected to this transition, and I'll get more into why I feel like this is so important, and we'll bring it back to America and Trump. So bear with me. 9/11, to me, is also a strong indicator of Aquarius. Now, one of the reasons is because the Twin Towers look like an 11 on the skyline of New York City, right? And 11 is the number of Aquarius. It's the 11th sign in the zodiac. There were lots of 11s, and it happened on 9/11. There was an 11, the shape of these buildings, and it was a worldwide event. One thing that Aquarius rules is trauma, and this was a traumatic event for really the entire world, or at least the world that was at least plugged into communication, right? TV, internet, whatever it was. I mean, we can all remember where we were when 9/11 happened. There were other events in modern era, like the Challenger exploding and JFK assassination, which were mass kind of trauma experiences, again kind of reflecting this Aquarian theme. But to me, this is the as below, so above, reflecting this transition to out of Pisces into Aquarius. So I'm going to take a few moments to go into like what are the themes, some of the themes of the signs of Pisces and Aquarius, and then how those relate politically. And but first, I want to just mention that you may be aware of something called Yugas, which is a Indian Vedic um, system understanding of epochs of time. They're talked about in the Vedas, and you may have heard of something called the Kali Yuga, which I've grown up, at least in my adult life, in spiritual circles, learning about, hearing that we were in the Kali Yuga, which is the dark age, the darkest age of the Yuga cycle. It goes through four phases: the Satya, which is the highest, most divine um, aspect of the Yugas, and then Treta, Dwapara, Kali, Kali being the darkest, and then it goes back through this circle again, back up to the divine Satya. Um, and I'm bringing this in because it feels like it's important to know that there's hope. Like we're we've come out of the Kali Yuga, actually. And so the teacher, Sri Yukteswar, was the guru or the teacher of Paramahansa Yogananda. You may have heard of his book, Autobiography of a Yogi. He's the one who essentially brought yoga to the West many years ago. And his teacher, Sri Yukteswar, actually threw a festival parade um, back in like the late 1800s or early 1900s. I'd have to read to get the exact date, celebrating the fact that we had entered the Dwapara Yuga. He went back over the Vedas and did a lot of calculating and realized that we had actually we were in the upswing. We were going into uh, climbing our way back to the divine age. So we've exited the dark and we're in the light, and or at least have come into more light. And what happens when the light comes on? Things that were in the dark get exposed. They have to, because uh the gravitation, the light, the light just doesn't have anything to keep it from shining, right? um unless it's hiding things. And um so we've been in a season of time, like we're in a time of things getting uncovered, getting revealed, so that we can continue into the light, unobstructed, unhindered. um I hope this is making sense. If you could just maybe put in the chat how you're doing with what I'm sharing so far, I'd really appreciate some feedback. um that would be awesome. So the age of Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter, traditionally, Neptune wasn't discovered until the 1700s. Um, thanks, Bradford. Um, so most of the age of Pisces, which is debatable when it started. We could say somewhere around the time of Jesus, maybe even going as far back as Buddha. Um, but themes of Pisces is a water sign, mutable water sign, and it's polarity in the sky is Virgo. So there's that Pisces Virgo axis. um it's about sacrifice, martyr, um and salvation, messiahs, gurus, religion. Large religious movements happened during the age of Pisces. Empires happened, which is, these are things strongly connected to Jupiter. Um, things expanding and things being controlled by emperors and this kind of thing, right? Um, some of the shadow aspects of Pisces, it's really strongly connected to escapism and addiction. So this whole idea of getting out of here, the rapture, the theology, and um, or even enlightenment, and this getting off the wheel of karma. These are all kinds of interesting um, reflections, we could say, of that escapism theme in Pisces. The other thing is that Pisces is the ocean. It's the water, right? So it's like all dissolved into one. It's really hard to, single out a specific drop of water unless you have like microscopes and that kind of thing. Um, so it's this idea of the individual doesn't really exist. It's more about the one, the all. And um the all is the all important. um I think Pisces, this kind of surrendering, which is a really good Piscean word, surrender, um is a good medicine on the heels of the age of Aries, which is the age that happened before this, right? So surrendering out of so much of the Aries energy and into allowing and trusting and religious faith and belief systems and all this. Another really important shadow aspect of Pisces is conspiracies and secrets, things that are hidden, delusions, illusions. All of this is Piscean territory. Now, if you look at Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus and Saturn, Uranus being the newer ruler of Aquarius, which was discovered around the same time that the US was created as well, in 1781, I believe. I'd have to look that exact date up, but it might be 84. Aquarius is a very different energy. It's an interesting imagery. It's not a water sign, but the symbol for Aquarius is the water bearer. So it's the person drawing the water and carrying the water, and creating something from that. So themes of Aquarius, it's the individual versus the group. So whereas in Pisces, the group, the collective really matters more than the individual. um Aquarius is both. It's about having an individual self, but and how can that individual self work with, be in connection with group, with the collective, in a way that's honoring of both. So it's much more, we could say, refined, or uh much more is required, we could say, to navigate that. Aquarius is about freedom and liberation. um whereas in Pisces, awakening was the goal. Aquarius, I feel, awakening is really the beginning. It's the beginning of actually being fully human, being a new human, we could say, and bringing and offering what it is in you that's to be offered. Again, the water bearer. What is your water that you're carrying? What's your juice? What's your gifts? Aquarius also rules technology, and we've seen a humongous leap in technology in the last 130 years. Um, Aquarius rules information. We talked that we're in the information age. We're overloaded with information, and here another reflection of that. I already mentioned individuation, self-actualization. So really, what is it that you're here to create? What is it that you want to do? Tensegrity is a word that I really like for Aquarius. If that's a new word for you, it's essentially um, what allows for structures to have integrity. It's a it's kind of a mixture of tension and integrity, those two words together. Um, and so in Aquarius, we're all being called to hold tension in new ways, and to bring ourselves fully forward and stay in relationship, and hopefully find a way to build structures that are compatible for the individual, and not overpowering or um, dissolving of the individual, like in Pisces. Um, Aquarius also is connected to like our chosen community, our chosen family. I will also mention a few more things about Aquarius since that's where we're at. I mentioned already Aquarius rules trauma, dissociation, which is also connected to trauma. If you have enough trauma, there's going to be dissociation, leaving the body. It's also about limits. Saturn rules reality, rules limits. Like there are limits to things, there are boundaries, there's order, and how can we work with that, but also be mindful and accepting of that. Cooperation, objectivity. Aquarius is also connected and rules astrology, vibrational healing, and human design, which is another wisdom tool that I won't go into here. Um, but essentially, it's about the individual. So anything that's really placing the focus on the individual, like homeopathy, astrology, human design, these wisdom tools that are really looking at the individual expression of life, are strongly connected to Aquarius. Um, and then with the Leo polarity of Aquarius, we're talking about that axis of creativity. Um, and we've had a burgeoning of creativity in the world, and that's just going to keep expanding. And I would also say that Aquarius is about personal responsibility. Um, so I'm feeling to, let's see, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll take a look at that. Just another final thought about Pisces versus Aquarius. Um, you know, Politically, governmentally, on larger scales, Pisces would be connected to, we could say, monarchies, um, empires, but also the idea of like socialism, communism, and even democracy. Like a pure democracy is ruled by the majority. So it's really any form of government that doesn't include protection for the individual, which those forms of government really don't. Um, they're they're kind of the tyranny of the majority. Aquarius is, like I said, it's about um, Aquarius is about apologize, uh, the individual and the group, the individual and the collective, both being very important, and one cannot overtake the other. And it's interesting. I'm not I'm not a political science geek. I don't know a lot about political science, but I do know that around the time that Uranus was discovered, we were also wrestling with creating our country. Our founding fathers were, um, and they were adamant about not about maintaining the rights of the individual. And so the system of government that they came up with was a constitutional republic, which is specifically about protecting the individual while also maintaining order and structure for society. It's a very different form of government. And I'm going to pause here. Joe asked, which zodiacal calendar is this based on? I know there are two. So the form of the zodiac that I use in my astrology practice is tropical. Um, the precession of the equinoxes, which is what the ages are about. It's really about what sign is the sun truly in at the um, vernal equinox, the spring, the spring solstice. Um, I may not have had that right, that term right, but um, and if it's observed over time that where the sun is in the sky is in a different sign. I think that's connected to the sidereal. Um, but it's a phenomenon that astrology is very familiar with. So I hope that answers your question. Um, at each sidereal and tropical, they both are very valid. There's lots of every once in a while I'll see a little meme or discussion online, and yeah, you can believe in the one that you're passionate about, but they all are valid. Um, all right, so I hope that's understanding you're understanding that so far. So I bring this up because it feels like it's important to just recognize that what our founding fathers created was in my view, in my estimation, very much in alignment with where we were headed collectively in the age of Aquarius. Um, that strong focus on honoring the integrity of the individual, the sovereignty of the individual. It wasn't just the monarch or the king or the emperor that had the sovereignty. It was each individual had protected rights. And that's what the Constitution's about. That's what the branches of government is about. That's what the Electoral College is really about. It's all connected into this focus, this intention to protect the individual. And so I'd like to and we're a nation of multiple states, right? So there's lots of individual expressions, 50 of them actually, plus the territories. Um, and we have to cooperate. We have to work together. We have to get along essentially. Um, another Aquarian expression. And so I wanted to take a moment to just read a few comments from the founding fathers on this idea of democracy. Um, The general object of the convention, the Constitutional Convention he's talking about, was to provide a cure for the follies and fury of democracy. Edmund Randolph from Virginia. Alexander Hamilton said, "We are now forming a republican government. Real liberty is not found in democracy. If we incline too much to democracy, we shall soon shoot into a monarchy." It's that tyranny of the group, which eventually kind of gets displaced onto one, or an oligarchy, a group of individuals. John Adams said, "Democracy will envy all, contend with all, endeavor to pull down all, and when by chance it happens to get the upper hand for a short time, democracy will be revengeful, bloody, and cruel." And we've seen that in places like, in the French Revolution, in throughout history, different countries, when there would be a revolution or overthrow, and then the group would have murderous rage often, um, the majority, and destroy their opponents, kill them. Thomas Jefferson said, "In questions of power, let no more be heard of the confidence in man, but bind him down by the chains of the Constitution." So there's something about the law, the limits that the Constitution sets, protecting the individual, that then affords us freedom to make new laws. But are they in agreement? Are they in alignment with the Constitution? And obviously, that application is not fallible, or it's not infallible. There's been lots of times in the U.S. history that we've flubbed that up, um, but this is like an ideal that they created. And it's interesting to note that the word democracy is not mentioned in the US Constitution, nor the Declaration of Independence, nor any of the 50 states' constitutions. So, we hear a lot about democracy in America, but really we're not a democracy. I mean, yeah, there's democratic principles, but we are a republic. And I think it's important to just know. And if that's for you to hear, it's probably worth investigating a little bit further. Um, why the founding fathers chose a constitutional republic, and I'm grateful that they did, because it is about honoring both the collective and the individual. Now, this is the chart of the U.S. Um, this is the one that most astrologers agree upon as far as the time, U.S. Sibley chart, and I'm bringing it up just to share a little bit about um, yeah, what's our destiny as a country? What's and I don't have time to go into a long spiel about that, but I wanted to at least surface that. I'm aware that I might be have underestimated the time that I need, so we'll see. What's interesting to note is in the USA chart, there's a lot of Cancer, Venus, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, all in Cancer. And this particular house, or even this section of the chart, is the most heavily weighted with placements. There's a lot of energy here. And so in our history, there's been a lot of focus on the world, on helping the world, um, humanitarian aid, spreading democracy. Um, this is all kind of seventh, eighth house, really seventh house stuff, especially Cancer. Cancers are really good about being of service and being there for other people and letting people lean on them, right? And sometimes are not good about having good boundaries and knowing when enough is enough. This is the all shadow aspect of Cancer, knowing when to take care of oneself. Um, and yeah, being able to say no. This is kind of shadow area for Cancer. But Cancer is a, on the high end, it's a very giving, loving, nurturing, mothering sign. Um, so I think that's important to notice, and then I'll come back up in a moment when we go a little bit further. But if we look at the nodes of the moon, it's interesting. The south node of the moon is in Aquarius, right? Which makes sense. I mean, the founding fathers, the early settlers were fleeing Aquarius, fleeing the monarchy, fleeing the taxes, fleeing the theft of the British government, and the control and the persecution, religious persecution. So um, that's kind of the south node, the history, the gravitation of where we came from, right? Out of extreme, out of trauma, out of bondage, um, finding our way out of bondage into our own country, our own nation, and we could argue about lots of things in that process. But um, so again, this also connects to that Aquarian ideal that we came to in the founding fathers with the constitutional republic. Um, the North Node, which is kind of where we're reaching for as a nation, is more of like what's our destiny, what's our purpose. Um, all the chart definitely speaks to that, but the North Node is a strong uh, focus for that. Um, and the eighth house is about intimacy. It's about truth, speaking the truth, being in being in right relationship, which includes being in integrity and authenticity with the other. And so it's also Leo, so that's the eighth house. Leo is really about um, belonging and playfulness, joyfulness. It's the sign of the king and the child, so that these archetypes of the child and the king. Um, and you'll see, I think, as we go along, that part of this destiny is to kind of liberate, I believe, liberate the world, especially the children of the world from slavery. This is part of what I see the destiny of the U.S. being, but also um, how can we be in relationship with other countries that honors the uniqueness, the sovereignty, Leo Aquarius axis, honors the sovereignty of the other nations while also honoring our own and being in relationship in that way, not dissolving our boundaries, not dissolving our sovereignty for the sake of a relationship, but how can we honor the individuals together? I hope, is this making sense to people? Please just say yes or no, or ask a question. um yeah, thank you, Bradford. um Gives a much deeper meaning to our founding. Yes, I agree. It's important to look at, that, and that's why I love astrology. It's like it helps us to see like what's the deeper motives and working of an individual or a group, a company, whatever. So I wanted to go back into a little history with some of the visions that I've had for previous presidents, and I kind of had um, this stance or this viewpoint that I wanted to know what spirit, what divine, like in my way of working with that, which has changed and evolved over years. Um, what was the divine desiring to see birthed in the world, either through the presidency or whatever. And so specifically in 2000, I was praying, meditating on who to vote for, who was being called really to be president. And the image I got was of a burning bush. And so I knew from that Bush was going to be president. Um, but I think, it's like looking back, you get a vision in the moment and you don't realize the significance of it till much later. Um, and what happened during Bush's first term, we had essentially a collective burning bush moment with 9/11 and the Twin Towers burning, being destroyed in front of us on television. And um, I feel like it was a burning bush moment. It was a call to awakening, which is what the burning bush was for Moses, if you know that story biblically. It was an awakening and a call to his calling, to his purpose, his mission. And one of the images I saw on 9/11 was like a woman. I could see a woman in the earth, like she was laying across the US and she was in labor. She was pregnant, she was fully term, and she was in labor and she was struggling to give birth. Like she was definitely in the throes of labor pains, and it wasn't getting very far along. But that was the imagery that I saw on around 9/11. After 9/11 happened, that's what came to me. And it feels like this woman, America, was trying to give birth to a new expression of humanity, a new expression of humanity. And that's what this kind of shock and awakening um, in 9/11, in that event, was about. It was about awakening us to uh, something. And I think that's still evolving, that's still unfolding. Um, I think part of that is still to come in what I'm going to say further here, but I just wanted to share that piece. Um, and then in 2007, I had a vision of Barack Obama winning. Um, and I think it was still the primaries were happening. Um, and it's interesting that the kind of the Moses theme has continued with Bush and Obama. It didn't continue past them, but necessarily. But if Aquarius is about liberation and freedom, like, okay, there is this exodus, exodus of, if you know the biblical story, the children of Israel were in bondage, enslaved in Egypt for 400 plus years, right? And then Moses came along, and we know the story from the Exodus of their journey out of bondage, and it was a very winding and perilous and difficult journey. Now, I didn't see. I saw this Exodus kind of energy around Obama. I didn't know what he really held in that, like who he was in that. But I knew that we were in a process of coming out of something, coming out of bondage. And I remember also being asked by Spirit if I would intercede for Obama. Um, in essence, kind of a shamanic kind of uh, orientation of uh, protecting him, like standing in some place of protection on a spiritual level. This is where my focus has been. It's been more on the spiritual dynamics that have been going on. And that year I finished, so this was 2007. I had finished hypnotherapy school earlier that year, and had done a deep dive into a healing work that I learned called Body Talk. And um and I was asked, I remember being asked, will you allow life to penetrate you? um and it felt kind of ominous, the question, but immediately it was like, yes, of course, yes, I will. um and during that time I had been doing healing work with clients, intuitive healing work, and this image kept coming up of the person kind of coming up out of the water onto dry land, coming, this walking out of the ocean onto dry land. This image just kept coming up and over, again and again. And um again, I think pointing back to where we're transitioning to, from we could say the enslavement to the all, Pisces, into the freedom to be ourselves, Aquarius. And I think this is all important to just, it's all woven together through the story. um and then in January of 2008, when Pluto went into Capricorn, I had a vision of myself standing in the bottom of this well, and it was dry. Yeah, I knew it was my well. I'd like processed some some significant amount of stuff, my own maybe personal karma up to that point. And and all of a sudden, I'm standing in the bottom of this well. All of a sudden there is this like shaking, quaking happening. It's like a violent earthquake happens, and an eruption happens from underneath my feet, and I'm blown up, shot up into the air. And it was an eruption of water, not fire, actually. But I put this image just because it would help me to remember what I was going to talk about. Um, And it was volcanic. It felt volcanic, and I remember there was volcanic eruptions happening around that time. I mean, of course, there's probably always are, but um, so this was a signal, a sign to me that something significant was getting ready to happen. And um, also around this time, um, connecting back to the people coming up out of the ocean onto the beach, onto dry land, I was attracting people into my practice who had current or past life experience with um, satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control, significant trauma of an evil, dark, sadistic kind. Um, and I was surprised that, like, why am I attracting these people? But it was like this was what was showing up, and I was trusting, um, maybe naively, um, but I was trusting what was happening. And um, long story short, essentially, it feels like I was essentially eating that material, that information, that energy, because it was fuel for something. It was really fuel for the place that I was standing shamanically. Um, and what ended up happening is that I lost touch with reality. I There was so much coming through me, so much I was trying to process. Again, this volcanic eruption that blew me out. Um, I'm so grateful that I had astrology and I had that vision. I had these little tokens, these little touchstones to help me navigate through that time, or I probably would have never come out of it. Um, because I wouldn't have had the context to be able to hold myself together. But I ended up in a mental hospital on Palm Sunday of 2008. Um, and all this stuff was just coming through me, all these like fairy tales and stories and stuff, that I later learned would be stuff that was used to program people in the ritual abuse and in the trauma-based mind control. There's a technology to it, and it's been going on for eons. Um, and thankfully, I survived that. I got out on Good Friday. It was very archetypal, the whole thing. Um, it was like a a curtain had been pulled back. Um, and one of the things that I felt, like, several things. I mean, there's a lot. And it took me years really to kind of process what I had been through. Um, but it was very clear to me that there was mass mind control happening collectively that we couldn't really get past. It was like ubiquitous. We were inundated with it. It was hidden, but and also right in plain sight. And it was also clear to me that there were aspects of ourself as humans, maybe higher aspects or divine aspects, that we were not able to really access because of the level of control that had been put over us, on a spiritual, energetic level. And I wrote here, our greatest light is found in the deepest darkness. This was something that I discovered in that time. Like where our divine aspects are is really in the deepest layers of the unconscious. Um, and this is, it feels, this is a good image. I feel like there had been a cap put on us collectively about where we could really go, where we could, what we could experience as being human, aspects of ourselves that we could experience. Um, and this was really what I was gifted. There were many years that I was very angry at God and angry at the divine for for the trauma that I went through, even though I know that I signed up for it, and chose it, and I wouldn't change a thing. Um, but I was given a gift, to look behind the curtain, we could say. Um, and so this is really what I've been holding on to since 2008, since Pluto went into Capricorn. Um, just the knowing and the awareness of the mass manipulation and mind control, um, and the technology that's been used on lots of different levels. Um, I thought this quote was important to just bring in here. A former CIA director, William Casey, said, and as far as I could tell, this was verified by a woman who was actually present in the Oval Office when he said this. Um, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. So, yeah, I mean, how better to control a population than to have them so confused and not in touch with reality because everything that they believe is false. Um, and this is, I don't know if you've heard of Kathy O'Brien. She is a survivor of trauma-based mind control. She grew up in a multi-generational family of uh, incest and abuse, and was sold, essentially sold to the CIA and to a program called MK Ultra. Her book is, I'll mention it in a moment, but she said what Americans don't know is destroying them from the insides out. Going back to that iceberg, if you can only see what's above, like if you can't see what's below, then how can you really make change, significant transformation, um, if we're unconscious of what's really going on? Um, and the ugly truth is that elites and power holders have used ritual and evil to control the world, for a very long time. Um, and the technology has just gotten more advanced, as time has gone by, which you can read more about in Kathy O'Brien's book. This is her book, Transformation of America. It's intense. She goes into graphic detail about what happened to her. It's very difficult to listen to. It's been difficult for me to. I have it on Audible, and I didn't realize, it was years later, after my experience in the mental hospital. I spent a total of several weeks in the mental hospital that year, several different hospitals, um, as I was kind of going into that hell realm and then coming out. Um, but a lot of what I experienced in my own process of that stuff erupting out of me was stuff that she describes in her book, stuff that Annika Lucas, um, there should be an S at the end there. Annika Lucas writes, and talks about. She has an amazing YouTube channel, and people have started coming forward more in the recent years. Um, Sharing their story. You can watch some interviews on YouTube. And then of course Jeffrey Epstein came about, and you know national security has kept a lot of this stuff hidden. Things people would try to come forward. Kathy O'Brien tried to come forward, but it was national security, and so everything got swept under the rug, or there were attempts on her life. um, so this is the realm, the depth that I was taken into, like it or not, um, some years ago. And that brings me to Trump. Uh, So in 2015, this was August of 15, a couple months after he came down the escalator with Melania. Um, I wasn't really, I wasn't behind anyone at that point. But I was meditating, praying, and had a vision of Trump winning the White House. And um, I was like, okay. I didn't watch what was it the Apprentice show. I didn't really care for him really actually. And but I was shown that he was going to win. It was actually he was going to be crowned um the winner. And along with that, I was shown a vision um of him in an operating room, and there was a woman lying on a table, and she was unconscious. I immediately knew the woman was America, the United States. She represented the United States, and she was covered with boils, lesions on her body, all over her skin, everywhere. And Trump was essentially acting as a surgeon and going around and lancing the boils. Um, and I thought, well, this is quite fascinating. Um, let's see that I recognized, I knew that Trump carried medicine that we as a nation needed. Um, and I also felt, as soon as I kind of grasped what he was carrying, or a sense of it, like I also felt that he had the strength to confront the evil that I just spoke about, the rich, really the power behind uh, the curtains, um, and the evil that was being foisted on really the world, because this is not just an American thing, it's a worldwide phenomenon. There are survivors from every Western country that have come forward. um so if I look at Trump's chart, Trump, his south node is in the fourth house, meaning that his family, his the people that he is responsible for are very important to him. He is a family man, and a fourth house south node brings, especially with the moon right there with it, brings a strong um intuitive, empathic uh ability as well. um his north node is up in the 10th house, which is really like the destiny, the mission, what you're here to do. um which we've seen a lot of him, so he's definitely accessed this part of his being, right? And his sun's here, his Uranus is here in Gemini, all in Gemini right here together. This to me speaks of a very strong calling to impact the collective in a way that is um destabilizing. Uranus destabilizing to the known order. It's contrary, it's unique, it's different, it's weird, and it's in Gemini, so it's going to come through what he says, partly. It's going to be unpredictable. Uranus is sudden, it's out there, it's the only planet in our solar system that rotates um vertically instead of horizontally on its axis. So it's the oddball. He's meant to be the oddball. He's meant I kind of see the archetype of the fool uh, in Trump, and I use that word very purposefully and sacredly. There is a sacredness to the archetype of the Fool. So, from my perspective as an evolutionary astrologer, I do see him kind of acting out a chart, and we'll come out. We'll come to more of that in a little bit. Um, I want to just pause and unpack the vision a little bit that I saw of all these boils being lanced on America's body. And, you know, what is the skin metaphysically, naturally, um, spiritually? It's what protects us from the outside, right? It's the border between us and the other, between me and you, right? The skin is, and the skin is where we make contact, right? It's what feels, it's what uh, can can make that contact, right? um so it doesn't take much to jump to the, or to leap to the idea that our borders were in trouble, and I think our borders have continued to be in trouble. And um coming from a Piscean perspective, if you're still really stuck in the age of Pisces energy, we don't need borders. Why do we need borders? We don't need borders. We're all one. We're all connected. Let's just love each other. Um, but that's really anathema to Aquarius, which is really about the sovereignty, the integrity of the individual, in this case, the individual nation, in relationship to the rest of the world, right? If we don't have the integrity of our own borders, there's something wrong. That's actually um disease. What is a disease that has issues with borders? Well, cancer is a disease that has borders have gone awry. There are no borders. So yeah, I see this medicine that Trump carries is important for us as a nation. If you think about it, like, it's about identity. It's about protection, defense, the immune system, um, and all the pus, all the angriness of these lesions, right, on America's body. It's all indicative of showing festering energy that has been going on in the collective of our nation for a very long time. It's not new, it's very old. um you could even go as deep as the abuse, the ritual abuse that has been going on underneath the surface, right? So when the disease, when the problem rises to the surface, to the skin, it's ready for healing. So um to me, this was also a sign that we were ready to go through some healing. And healing is not always pretty. Healing is disruptive. Healing can be energy exhausting. And we've definitely seen lots of eruption happening in our country since Trump came on the scene. Um, and I, while that's unfortunate, while that's difficult, it's not to be avoided. It's not to be run from. It's not to be squashed or judged as wrong, in my view. It's part of the process of the healing, and this is a multi-year process of healing. Um, so somebody asked, what as a country are we putting in our gut that comes out as boils like this abuse? Exactly. Um, it's the abuse. And remember, we have South Node in Aquarius in our chart, which again is connected to trauma. We there's ways in which trauma, like we were born right on the heels of a war. And um and then there's the trauma of our founding and our relationship with the Native Americans and all of this. This is um I think this is all tied in. It's all connected. And um the North Node in Leo in the eighth house, like things have to come into the light. Leo is ruled by the sun. Things have to come into the light. The things in the dark, the eighth house. The eighth house rules the unconscious, rules um, the underworld. Um, I think part of our mission, our work as a nation, is to unearth the things that have been unthinkable for the collective, not just our nation. I think that's part of why America is so important, is the work that we're doing, whether we like it or not, is about liberation on a collective level. Um, I think that's enough of that. Yeah. So I really do feel more and more is going to be uncovered in the days and years ahead. Um, because we can't really move forward in a whole and integral way if this stuff is just sitting underneath the surface festering, right? So from my point of view, Trump's destiny is not fulfilled yet. His medicine is not complete. We still have festering wounds that need to be lanced, that need to be expressed. Um, and so that means that there's probably more difficulty ahead, right? Um, but it's times like these that really forge us and help us to evolve and grow. Um, and so I wanted to just bring in, so inside this inner circle is the US chart, and then Trump's chart is placed around the USA chart. And so I just wanted to point out some interesting things that kind of correlate with what I saw. Um, um, I agree, Joe. Um, Correlated with what I see in his chart in relationship to the US chart. So first of all, what's the planet that rules surgery or surgeon is Mars. So Trump's Mars is at 26 degrees Leo, whereas our moon is at 27 degrees Aquarius. The moon is really about healing, and it's about the heart. It's about the feelings, right? So the moon rules emotions, the heart, feelings, um, connected to a lot of those things. And for our chart, the US chart, the moon rules the sun, which is so that's very important. Um, so here is that connection of surgery in connection to the emotions, the medicine that he brings. Um, and then his sun and North Node are also on top of the Mars of the nation's Mars. So really pointing out and putting weight at on the part of our chart that really is about us needing to defend ourselves, needing um to set boundaries. Mars is the part of us that can assert ourselves, that can assert our will, can assert our boundaries, can assert, like, this doesn't feel good to me. No. It's the part of us that can say no. Um and his chart, his energy is highlighting that for the nation. Hold on, wait a minute, there's some things we need to say no, we've been taken advantage of for a while. He says that quite often. um and then the final thing I want to point out is his Chiron, which is the wounded healer archetype. It's a healing arc placement, is on top of our Saturn. And Saturn would definitely, along with Mars, be connected to, but Saturn would definitely be the part that rules borders, boundaries, structure, also government. So bringing healing to structures, boundaries, borders, government, exposing, um, and also Saturn is connected to the idea or the archetype of father. So bringing healing to the father archetype, and I think that's still something um, to be really seen yet. Um, and you know, like a good astrologer, when I saw that vision of Trump winning, I had to go look at his chart. And the thing that stood out to me was his progressed sun had moved out of Leo into Virgo and was right smack dab on top of his ascendant. This is, you know, not to get lost in the weeds. This is a huge event in someone's chart. Huge. Um, moving from one sign to the next is a huge event for the progressed sun, but having it be on his ascendant was also huge. It that to me sealed it for me, like he's definitely going to win. And he's moving out of a place of building wealth and doing things for himself into a Virgo mode, which is one of service. So I definitely feel that with him. It's not about, you know, yeah, I think it takes a big personality to be in politics, and Trump is a big personality. Um he's full of it. But it's also, that's part of the medicine that I see that he carries. He needs to be that way in order to stay in the game of things, um, and do what he's here to do, to serve the collective. Um, I wanted to share just a few more things that I saw about Trump as well, um, back in 2015, 2016. One of the things I saw was I got an image of George Washington, and I remembered stories from, I don't know, high school or somewhere, of George Washington surviving, um, this great battle and a number of battles in the French Indian War before our nation was founded. And he would get home and find bullet holes in his hat and his jacket, and he had not been hit. He had not been touched really. Um, and this was there's a book written about it. There's lots of stories about it. But I saw this for Trump, like there was some divine hand of protection that was going to be on him, and that akin to this image here, the duck, the water, it's like the water would just roll off of his back. He would be going through a lot. He would be taking a lot for this country, but there would be some degree of protection on him. I also I brought up this image because it reminds me of, like, I also heard that he would be known as, um, the best president we'd had in over 100 years, and I have heard that come out of somebody's mouth on, publicly, but I think that will be more commonly known by the time he's, finished. I also feel like I also heard that he would have the highest approval rating of any modern president leaving the office. That's still yet to be seen. We will see. But I feel that will be true. Um, and just a few more charts that I'd like to look at real quick. This is the USA chart with the progressions, the current, well, I brought this one up because it feels important because we just in March of this year had a progressed new moon for our country. And I'm always looking for this in a person's chart when I do a reading for someone because it's such an important thing to point out because it really is kind of a backdrop or it foreshadows everything that's happening currently, um, at least in the short term. Um, so the new moon, the moon progresses around the chart every 30 years. It takes 30 years for the moon to progress around the chart. So in March, the sun and moon were both at 19 degrees of Pisces. Um, what do we know about the new moon? It's a dark phase of the moon, meaning you can't, there's no light in the sky. The moon is overshadowing, right? They're together. The moon is between the sun and the earth. So there is no light, there's no luminary in the night sky. And that is a metaphor for how the new moon is felt. It's a dark time. So when a new moon happens in a person's life, progressed new moon, it's like you can't really see in front of you. It's like there's a lot of shadowiness, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of not knowing. And that's even further emphasized by the fact that this is happening in the third house, which is very strongly connected to being in the moment and not really having a big picture view, but only being able to see like the next thing like in front of you. You can't see down the path. So we've been in a dark moon phase. The balsamic phase before the new moon phase is also dark moon. We've been in a dark moon phase for a good 3.5, 4 years now. And then this will continue for another 3 years, the new moon phase. So I feel like that's important to mention because it really gives context to where we are. Like we can't see like where are we headed, like what's our future, what's going on. That's kind of the point. With the new moon, it's like it's a new cycle, it's something new is happening, and so we have to kind of let go of the old and step into something new, and we don't quite know what that is yet. We kind of have to fumble our way into that knowing. um but where the new moon happens is important, and so I'll point out that this new moon is happening opposing Neptune, our natal Neptune, which feels important because I think this is like, since we've been in a time where Neptune has been very strong lately because it's been transiting through Pisces, its own sign. So Neptune has been very powerful for the collective for a number of years now. And we have, and that affects like what do we believe? What do we know? What do we hold to? Remember, Neptune is connected to illusion and delusion. And so I think this new moon corresponds with some awakening to truth, third house, facts, truth coming to light that may have been hidden, obscured by Neptune over the last number of years. It's also squaring, this new moon is also squaring Mars. So a theme I feel, or some themes I feel for the next 30 years for our country is kind of coming out of the fog of illusion, delusion, awakening to truth, reality, and also having dialogue, discussion that is confronting Mars, confronting of that is indicative of the truth that has been encountered. So things are going to be a little bit more like confronting for us. I mean, they already have been, but it's going to continue. That's going to be a thing that will continue. Um, let's see if I feel like I've covered a lot, and maybe this is a good place to stop. Um, I'm curious if people have questions or comments. You're welcome to unmute yourself and say something if you like. Um, I'll give a moment just to see if anyone cares to jump in. Yeah, so Bradford writes that end of democracy we hear so much from both sides feels more like a false distraction now. Yeah, exactly. It's inflated. It's a delusion, illusion. Um, yeah, and it's a way to, how are we controlled through fear? Fear is what causes the control. Um, yeah, untrue. Yeah. Um, so you know we are in for some continuing interesting rides in this country. Um, I hope that this perspective has given you a little bit of food for thought. Um, that you can take what feels correct for you to take from this. Um, and I'd like to share too that I feel a lot of hope for our future. Um, I yeah, I that feels very solid in me. I feel deep trust and faith in our future, and it's going to take all of us being who we're meant to be. That Aquarian theme of stepping into our individuated selves, our self-actualized selves, bringing our water forward, what we have transmuted, and giving that back, bringing that back to the collective. Um, it's so important now, and it's not about winning or losing. That's not what it's about. One side winning, one side losing. It's about us all winning. It's about cooperation. It's about um, creating creating an environment um, for all to thrive, really. Um, and I just see that Trump carries the medicine that we need to get us to that future, or at least toward that future, right? Whether he knows it or not, and it may be things that happen spontaneously around him, in spite of him, whatever it is. He's just a figure, an important figure. But um, so I want to thank you for witnessing this, watching this, being a part of this, and yeah, thank you so much for your attention, your time. If you have questions or if you have feedback for me, I invite you to go to my website, evolutionarywaves.com. There's a contact page that you can write to me through. I would love to hear from you. I do, yeah, it would be helpful to hear if this made sense to you, or what questions you have, or yeah, anyone care to share anything more before we go?
I just want to say thank you, David. That was fascinating. I put in the chat that I always learn something new from you and the tools that you use to understand and find, meaning in the chaos. So this is helpful.
Mm. Thank you so much, Bradford. I appreciate that feedback. Thanks for being here. All right. Much love and all the best to all of us. And may we just hold true to ourselves as we navigate these interesting times ahead. All righty. Bye bye.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.